The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday, August 24th, 2016. Thanks so much for joining us. A lot happening in the news, a lot happening internationally in particular. I want to cover that. I know right now, well, maybe I shouldn't say it, because if you're here, you're probably here because you don't know Bernie Sanders is speaking live. But we're going to cover that. If we have some people, some of the team members are listening into that, and we'll cover some of it as we go along in the show. If something just jumps out of the pages, we'll discuss it. And so that's that. I want to thank everyone who supports the show on a regular basis. As always, I thank the patrons at the top of the show, simply because we can't do it financially without you. And I definitely want to thank everyone who's just a regular subscriber, a follower, wherever you support and follow from. Thank you so much for doing it. I want to thank my latest patrons who came in overnight. Jamie M., thank you so much for your pledge. We really appreciate that. Jared, I believe we mentioned Jared yesterday. If I didn't, Jared, thanks so much for becoming a patron. And there was one other person I know who updated their pledge and raised it significantly. So listen, thanks to everyone, to all of my patrons. Make sure that you check out the bonus show that we will be having tonight. The bonus show is actually, we're going to record the bonus show after the show. And tonight I'll be having two of my researchers here in-house. They've been working with me for about a month or so now. Max and Mary, M Squared. They'll be joining us to discuss some intergalactic news. Well, not intergalactic, interstellar news. Yeah, that's more accurate. Interstellar news. So they'll be joining us to discuss that in the after show. So let's get to it, because there is a lot on the agenda. I want to talk about Leslie Jones. Leslie Jones, and I'll pull up her picture on the screen for those of you who may not know her. She recently starred in the reboot to Ghostbusters, the all-female cast of Ghostbusters. And I talked about Leslie before on the show because of the harassment that she received on Twitter. And it has been escalated, to say the least. Leslie has been doxed. Her personal information has been hacked and released, including photos of her license, photos of her passport, along with nude photos allegedly from her iCloud account. They pulled and hacked her website and published this as all. This is the worst experience a person can have online, is to have their personal confidential information broadcast for the entire globe to see, anyone with the internet access. And this is just direct retribution for the fact that Milo Yiannopoulos, whatever his last name is, also known as Nero on Twitter, was suspended indefinitely because of the harassment that he led to her. Not necessarily the direct harassment that he engaged in, but the people that he led to her to harass her in a very racist and misogynistic way. I've talked about this. I don't talk about it a lot because I don't like to talk about it, because it really taps a nerve, and the nerve that it taps is the reality that if you're going to be in the public eye, you almost have to disengage from your human side and become numb and dead to all of the possibilities, because you have some people who get joy out of making your life miserable, both online, and if they can reach into your life offline, they will do so. And this is what they did with Leslie. Putting out her personal information, her driver's license with her address on it, her passport information. I mean, it's a really dangerous situation. It opens her up to people finding where she lives, people stealing, well, maybe not stealing her identity, but gaining access to her identity, to say the least. The attack also featured a video of the gorilla Harambe which is a clear racist overtone, not overtone, an overtone, a directly racist attack against her. So, and I've talked about this, let's be clear. And some people don't like it when I talk about this, but let's be absolutely clear. I don't think you could have been on the internet for more than a day without seeing some type of harassment of women, and then drill down a little further, harassment of women of color, particularly black women. I see it all the time. More importantly, or more specifically, rather, I see it with women who are in the limelight or doing something. And if they do anything other than serve as the sexual target or the sexual fantasy, the subservient role for the internet community, you're going to have a subset of the internet, a subculture that will lash out and attack. I mean, so long as you're providing sexual fantasies for this group, you're okay. But if you cross the line and do something that's outside of the accepted realm for women on the internet, you will be targeted with harassment. And yes, that harassment does go on with individual women and women who are not, that don't have any notoriety, and, they're not a star. It does happen. But the moment you take a public persona, the moment you get into the quote unquote limelight, you are an immense target. Now, Leslie became an even bigger target because she fought back against the harassment. And because she fought back against the harassment, she has received this doxing. Ultimately, I think that they're trying to scare people. And this is the last bit on this, and I want to do a deeper dive. Ultimately, I believe they want to scare people into not fighting back and allowing the internet to be their world. And the problem is, no, the internet is not your world. You could have your 4chan, and you could have some of your subreddits that are your world, right? But the general and whether people like it or not, the general population and the watering holes and the water coolers of the internet are becoming places where standard accepted norms must be employed. And I think that portion is driving people crazy because they want to be free to, without any repercussions, to say and do and treat you however they want, because this is the internet. And if you can't take the joke, get the F off the internet, right? That's the attitude. But the reality of it is that Facebook, Twitter, all of these places where hundreds of millions of people, and I now believe Facebook is in the billions now. They have over 1 billion users, if I read this article correctly. It's becoming a public place where standard, common courtesy, respect, or at a minimum, non-harassment must take place, right? It's becoming a place where you cannot harass people. And that's to the dismay of a lot of people who gets their rocks off with harassment, through harassment, whatever. And it inevitably comes back to this conversation about, we think it comes back to the conversation about freedom of speech and censorship and, all these things that we try to make. All of a sudden, we try to make this be we try to make it a noble fight to give people like Milo and to give people like the folks who doxed Leslie, to give them space to be able to speak their mind freely. We try to make it seem like it's a noble cause, and because the right thing is for us to be tolerant of everyone, even people who are intolerant. But that's not true. The truth of the matter is there's so many people, in these places. The revenue is so dependent on these people remaining in these spaces that all of these platforms are going to, and you see the trend, they're more and more and more, they're cracking down on a certain level of harassment. And whether we like it or not, that's their business, that's their prerogative. It will turn around and bite someone in the ass that we may like eventually. But as of late, it's been biting the trolls in the ass. And I'm not, again, like I said before, I'm not going to shed a tear over the people who get shut down doing things like this, because there's no reason in the world that Leslie Jones's information should have been exposed to the public under any circumstance. There's no justification for it, and anyone who tolerates it or champions it or celebrates it, in my opinion, they're the scum of the earth. 857-600-0518. I knew I forgot to do something. I did not activate my phone lines, but that's okay. It takes about 2 seconds because I want to get you in on the conversation, particularly with Leslie Jones. What do you think? What do you think about the people who did this? What do you think about the tension? The tension between because what led to this, right? So you don't have the freedom to dox someone and to harass them in this manner. But what led to this was really focused around the conversation of freedom of speech online. So what do you think about the tension between the freedom of speech that people ostensibly, or people believe they ostensibly have online? So 857-600-0518. If you want to join the conversation, let me just double check something here. I want to make sure that that is ready for you. And we should be good. All right. Well, while I test that out on the fly and live, let's talk about the next story in international news. This is a very, very tragic story. An earthquake that registered a 6.2 magnitude earthquake in Italy, in the city of Amatrice. I believe that's how you pronounce it if you are not Italian. But today, this morning, there are at least 159 people who are dead and 368 who have been injured. I'll be putting some images on the screen so that you can see the scope of the destruction. Many of those who were killed and injured are children. And this is northeast of Rome. So at least, again, at least 159 are dead. This is in the historic town. Amatrice is a historic town where the mayor said 3/4 of the town has been destroyed. And you can see before and after what the block looked like before the earthquake and what this particular block looked like after the earthquake. It's the devastation is really really significant. So the town itself is an ancient, it really dates back to ancient times. The reason I wanted to look into like how old the town is because if you look at the scale and the magnitude of the earthquake, 6.2 is a large earthquake, but a lot of cities are prepared for earthquakes of that magnitude, or at least they're as prepared as they can possibly be. And you know, if you put it in comparison, because if you don't live in an earthquake-ridden zone, it's kind of hard to put this in comparison. The earthquake in Haiti that claimed the lives of between the low end of the estimates is 100,000 people. The high end is 300,000 from reports from the government of Haiti. That was a 7.0. And a lot of the reason there was so much widespread destruction and death was because of their building codes were not such that it required preparation and reinforcement for earthquakes. And because the building codes were not up to that level, you had a 7.0 earthquake devastate the entire nation like nothing we've seen, nothing I've ever seen. In Japan, the earthquake that triggered a tsunami was 9.0 if you want to put it in comparison. Now, 16,000 people died because of that earthquake and the ensuing tsunami. And I believe as of 2015, there were still 2,500 people missing. But that was a 9.0. And in San Francisco, the largest that we have or the most devastating that we have on record for San Francisco back in 1906 was a 7.8 magnitude, where over 3,000 people were dead and 80% of the city was devastated. So the 6.2, when I heard how big it was, a 6.2, it is big, but for it to cause so much damage, those buildings are older buildings. It is an older, actually an ancient city that dates back, literally dates back originally to, hang on, let me see the dates here. The 14th century, right? The city was home to 14th century religious artwork and churches. It actually dates back to prehistoric times, but in the 1500s, it was burned down. The city was built back. So you have buildings that are there that have been there for a very long time. And so they could not withstand a 6.2 magnitude earthquake. Again, the devastation that's coming out of there is really tragic, and we're keeping an eye. They're still pulling people out of the rubble. They're still recovering bodies. Some people are surviving. Some people are not. Obviously, they're being pulled. Hang on, I just want to show you a few more pictures here so that you can get an idea. It's on what's on your screen now. You can see they're still recovering people from the rubble, and so far, 159 people have been killed. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. Obviously, they are still in the process of recovery. There are a lot of people across the world who are actually, the Pope led the prayer of the Rosary with over 15,000 people today, specifically for the victims of the earthquake in Italy. So we'll keep our eye on that, and as the totals rise, hopefully it does not rise anymore, but it definitely shot up. When we woke up this morning, it was about 20 people reported to have been killed, and by the time we started the broadcast, it was 159 with 368 injured, and again, many of them are children. All right. 857-600-0518. If you want to get in on any of the conversations, you can do so. Another story, international story, that's definitely something we want to cover, is the French Burkini story. I don't know if you've been following this, but this is something that jumped on my radar this morning. And actually, it's been on my radar for a little while, but I haven't covered it until now. And the reason I'm covering it now is because it really just kind of puts it, I'm putting some pictures on your screen now. It is a incident that took place today or last night. The French police cited a woman at the beach for wearing a burkini on Tuesday. And it was at the Promenade d'Anglais, the scene of last month's Bastille Day attack in Nice. So her ticket read that she was not wearing an outfit respecting good morals and secularism. Last week, the city barred clothing that manifest adherence to a religion at a time when France and places of worship are the target of terrorist attacks. The law itself, one of the first iterations of the law, came into practice or was passed, rather, April 11, 2011. The fine is 150 French euro, or approximately 170 US dollars. And it was banned because it was argued that the face coverings contradict France's principles of vivre ensemble, or living together. And this is the quote, according to figures released by the Interior Ministry as of October, police made 1,623 stops since the ban came into effect and handed out 1,546 fines to a total of 908 women. Several of them were repeat offenders. One was fined individually 33 times. In 2013, a pregnant Muslim woman miscarried after two men attacked her and tried to remove her headscarf. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. And I want to show another image on your screen. And I apologize to those who are listening via the radio show. You kind of have to see it too. Or maybe not. Maybe you can understand just by hearing what was going on, how problematic this is. Because ultimately, in their attempts to live together, vivre ensemble, they are creating an environment that is intolerant to a religion, which brings back a concept, the difference between what we have here in the United States, which is freedom of religion, versus what they have in France, which is quite literally freedom from religion. Laicity, extreme secularism underpins modern French society. It's freedom from religion. Seeing someone in religious garb to them is imposing their religion on you. So not so much the freedom to worship and do whatever you want to do. It's, I have to see you in a burqa. I have to see you in traditional Muslim or Arabic garb, and I feel like it is it's infringing on my right as a French secularist to live without your religion. In the United States, we have freedom of religion, which basically asserts that we all have the right to worship whatever we want to worship, or worship nothing at all. But we've come to a pretty wide consensus that means that in the public square, we're all free to demonstrate our religion so long as it doesn't infringe on someone else's individual rights. In other words, in France, it's looked down upon on you wearing traditional religious garb because, oh my God, I have to see you wear your religious garb. Here in the United States, it's when you try to impose your religious beliefs on us where we're like, hold up, there's a problem. And therein lies a problem, right? So if we're imposing our religion, meaning we're trying to come into your space, into your world, and force you to conform to our religious practices, which a lot of people in America still try to do, right? That's where we separate ourselves, and we say that now you're violating that freedom of religion. But it's uniquely different. But the difference in France, I believe, is that it's focusing like with a laser-like focus on Islam. The reason I say that is because on your screen, I'm pulling up now an image of nuns in France on the beach, dressed in I forgot what it's called. What are the nuns' outfits called again? I forgot. I'm so disconnected from religion right now. I couldn't tell you what this is called, but they're dressed in their religious garb. So my problem is, if this is all about French secularism, then why the emphasis and the attention on Muslims? Because if it's, and not a similar emphasis on every religion. Because if it's really about secularism, then it should be across the board against all faiths. But the reality of it is that it's not just about secularism. It's an intense laser-like focus, again, like I said, on Islam. Now, the French people ultimately, they're French. We can no more tell them what to do than they could tell us what to do. But the idea that this is okay is something that I've seen sneak up in America from people who want that style of secularism. And I have no problem as a Christian with secularism in the context that we have it here in the United States, because we should all be able to have and express our religious values or our non-religious, our faith or our no faith, without someone infringing on our ability to express it, so long as what we're expressing does not infringe on your rights. And I think the thing that bothers me the most, and I've said it already, but I have to say it again, they feel like if I see you doing your religious activity, then you're infringing on my rights. And to me, that's directly correlated with, it may not be apples to apples, but damn it, I'm going to say it anyway. It's just like the bigots who see someone in LGBT couple in public with a public display of affection. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, you're violating my rights. No, I'm not violating your rights. I have the right to be free in the public space just like you can. If you have the right to be non-religious, I have the right to be religious, and we can ride on the train by each other. If you have the right to be heterosexual and kiss your spouse or kiss your girlfriend, I should have the same right to kiss my boyfriend and sit on the train next to you, and we all go to our destination and everybody just keeps on with their life. But this concept that if I have to see it, that means it's infringing on my rights. That's not I hate to even use the word progressive in this sense, because I don't want to belittle a basic fundamental decency principle and say that it's and align it with a political ideology, right? It is a progressive concept, but I think it's more of decency and decent humanity to be able to allow someone to have their space to exist without you feeling like my presence itself. I mean, literally, it's like, can I not sit on a bus next to you, right? We can go even further back, right? We can go back to civil rights. Like, can I sit and can I drink from the same water fountain from you? Or is my presence here that disturbing to you that now you feel like simply because I'm here and I'm wearing my burqa that I have violated you? And it boils down to something very, very, very simple. If you feel like a woman should be free not to be forced to wear something, if you feel like a woman should be free from religion and not have to be forced by a religion to wear something, then you should likewise feel equally as passionate about a woman not being forced to not wear something. It's the same exact thing. It's about this compulsion and the control that, I mean, look at the image. You have 4 French male police officers forcing a woman to undress, controlling her body, controlling her decisions to wear what she wants to wear. And you actually have some people in the United States co-signing this idiocy. And they co-sign it. Here's the rub, right? They co-sign it underneath the auspices that they think that this is somehow a more progressive society. And some of the same people who complain about the regressive left and say that, we're getting so far gone with social justice warriors that we become the regressive left. Some of those same people are celebrating this. So tell me, how much more regressive is it for people to dictate what you can wear because they don't feel comfortable with your religion? That is the quintessential example of regressive left. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that for right now. We'll leave it there. Of course, I do want your input. I want your what you have to say. 857-600-0518. Let's see if I figured out what I did in my phones tonight. I didn't prep. I didn't turn my phones on in time, and I think it's ultimately going to be my fault, but that's okay. I can multitask here as I move to the next story. Yeah, and when you call in, we can speak about all the above, right? Let's talk about Leslie Jones being doxxed. Let's talk about the earthquake in Italy, and let's talk about the French Burkini, and we'll go from there. In other news, also on the international stage, Turkish incursion into Syria. It's going to take me a minute to unpack this one because it's kind of a big story with a lot of actors. So no sooner than the show was over last night, or this morning rather, yesterday I was talking about that I don't believe that this is a world war. And I still don't think it's a world war. But as soon as the show was over, Turkey got involved with an incursion. So up to this point, Turkey has not been they had not intervened directly into the Syrian conflict, but they had been supporting rebels, but they had been reluctant to directly engage. So President Erdogan said the operation was aimed against the Islamic State and Kurdish fighters. So no sooner than the show was over, the situation in Syria is so dynamic and it's changing so quickly that now we have a new state actor on the stage, right? Directly involved, not as a proxy, but Turkey is directly involved. And it complicates the situation a bit more with the Turkish-backed rebels. They took over a strategic town near the Turkish border that was previously controlled by the Islamic State. So they were able to do so by the assistance of Turkish armor and U.S. military air power. So not only was it Turkish, but it also had the imprint of the United States. The interesting thing, so there's a lot of interesting things going on here. It was reported that the troops stormed the city, but actual footage from the scene shows that they were able to take the city without hardly any pushback from ISIS. Really no significant fighting taking place. ISIS didn't leave anyone there to try to hold the city, no skeleton force, nothing. They took the city pretty much without incident, without major incident. And if you consider the implications of that, it seems as though there was at least a back channel communication at the minimum, right? Some commentators are saying that it's a direct coordination between Turkey and ISIS. I doubt it's so much a direct coordination as ISIS realized they're coming. We really can't do anything against Turkey. And so this is not a strategically important city beyond the fact that we want to expand our so-called caliphate. But realizing that they could not hold the territory, it sounds like once they realized Turkey was coming, they simply ceded the territory back to Turkey, which to me is a signal that they are moving very strategically and they're moving like rational actors, which we try to dismiss them as being irrational actors. But this was a very strategic move to just cede this territory without a major conflict, to make it seem as though they lost the territory in battle, which would undermine the legitimacy of their so-called caliphate even more. So the reason I bring up the fact that they're acting pragmatically is that I believe a pragmatic ISIS is an even more dangerous threat than an irrational ISIS. Because if they're willing to cede territory and retreat without making a glorious stand for their caliphate and for whatever they believe, then that means that they are going to be making rational decisions every step of the way, to the point where they're likely to be in this fight a lot longer than what the international community can actually tolerate. Now, the real question is, will they so easily cede critical cities? Right. Cities that are their base of operations, their capital, will they see? And that's the real test. Right. I believe that they will not see that territory without going down to the last man. But on these border cities, these border territories, we see that they've been ceding these territories without significant conflict. All right. But the other side of the story is there's another state actor involved in this small region. And I want to bring up some graphics here just for us to take a look at. And the graphic that I'm pulling up, actually, I want this graphic. This graphic shows you all of the different territories that are underneath the control of different factions, inside of Syria. And as you can see, Syria has been, there's so many actors on the stage right now. You have the Syrian Defense Forces, which primarily being made up of the Kurdish YPG fighters, the Peshmerga. They are in the yellow territory to the north. You have the Free Syrian Army, who has different, they represent the area in green to the west, just south of the YPG territory in the north, and then also in the south. You have Turkey, who is now involved, who makes up the blue territory. You can't really see it on this graph, but it's on the border. And this is the recent territory that was just taken. The Islamic State, they're in black. This is all of the territory that has been taken by the Islamic State, the so-called Islamic State. And then, of course, you have other actors involved. You have the U.S., you have Saudi Arabia, you have the Gulf states, you have Iran, you have Russia, all of them being involved right now in this small region. And with all of these actors on the stage, it's hard not to, and of course, China now coming in a consultative role. It has all the makings of a legitimate world war because of how many powers are in this one region. However, again, the reason I don't buy into that just yet is because, one, we're not in a total war state where the entire nation has been mobilized for total war. That's one of the clear markings of a world war. We don't have great powers who are directly engaged. So we do have, if anything, it's a very murky and problematic proxy war at this point. I think it's fair to say that this is a proxy war at this point. And I'm sure there's going to be some scholars who absolutely disagree, but I guarantee you at this point, we can find some scholars who do agree. But I want you to take a look at this map one more time so that you can get an idea of just how broken that region is. And out of all the territories, the red portion in the southwest quadrant of your screen, that is under the control of the Assad regime. So in black, you have ISIS. In yellow, you have the Syrian Defense Force. In green, you have the Free Syrian Army. And those are just, ISIS, the Syrian Defense Forces, the Free Syrian Army. Those are just two of the many rebel factions fighting in ISIS, right? In Syria, so there are so many different competing interests in the region. It's really hard to get a really firm grip on who's fighting who, when, and why, and what's their desired outcome, and how does that desired outcome affect the stability of the region. I think it's safe to say that this is something that's going to, it changed since last night, and it's going to continue to change, and it does become more problematic the more state actors get involved. And each state actor is going in with their individual national interests in mind. But mind you, last week, one of the generals who were leading, I forgot what role he's playing there, but he stated a direct commentary towards Russia. He said that if Russia gets in the way, or if Russia, if there's some type of incident with Russia, we're going to defend ourselves against Russia in Syria. Okay, so that type of language coming from one of our generals is, obviously true. I don't want to say it's just problematic, because it's clearly true, and they want to send that signal. But being so close in this region, having so many actors in this region with so many competing interests, it's almost just a powder keg. It's just waiting on something of that magnitude to happen. And thankfully, so far, we have not had a conflict that involved one of the great powers or the superpowers. Everything has been pretty much a proxy war to this point. But Turkey getting involved obviously complicates the situation even more. Thankfully, they were able to take the territory today without any major fighting with ISIS. But we'll keep an eye on what's happening in that region. I think all of us need to keep an eye on what's happening in that region. All right. In other news, let's get to some domestic news. Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation and the new 14,900 new emails. We talked about it a little bit last week. We referenced it a little bit. But so the Clinton Foundation is back in the news. And they're in the news because of the Associated Press and Donald Trump. So Donald Trump in a speech this week said that he's calling for an investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Donald Trump said it's impossible to figure out where the Clinton Foundation ends and the State Department begins. This coupled with the Associated Press analysis that they got data from the State Department and they got it through a lawsuit. They discovered that 85 out of 154 private individuals who got to meet or had phone calls with Hillary Clinton were also donors to the Clinton Foundation. In other words, over 50% of the people who got a meeting with Hillary Clinton or had a phone call with Hillary Clinton were donors to the Clinton Foundation. It's not clear whether or not those donations took place before or after. I'm sure there's probably a combination of all the above. But what is clear is that over half of the people who met with Hillary Clinton were donors. So even though there have been calls for the FBI to investigate, the FBI has declined to investigate the organization. And Donald Trump has referred to this as evidence of a pay-to-play scheme between the Department of State and the Clinton Foundation. So you have two sides of this equation that in the arguments that's going on right now. Number one, you have a lot of people who are stumping the ground to make it clear all of the good things that the foundation has done. And let me say, as I start, I'm going to actually outline some of because they have done some good. Let's be clear. They have done some good. But I don't think the good that you do precludes you from or protects you from the bad that you do. So I was going to do my best. I tried. But so here it is. The Clinton Foundation, they're made up of 11 nonprofits who focus on four major things: global health and wellness, climate change, economic development, and opportunities for women and girls. They operate in over 70 countries. They directly help 11.5 million people. They provide HIV/AIDS medication to 800,000 children at 90% reduced costs. They have provided high quality fertilizer to East African farmers. They operate in the U.S. as well, programs to U.S. schools designed to improve nutrition, health, and physical education. And because of the good things that they've done, you have a lot of voices who want to put the focus on the good that they've done. But there are also some issues with the foundation. Reuters discovered that from 2010 to 2013, the foundation's health arm wasn't disclosing all of its donors. Hillary Clinton promised that the foundation would publish all of its donors every year, but this didn't happen. Charity Watch, in spite of this, though, Charity Watch has given the Clinton Foundation an A grade. They get great ratings from all of the quote unquote official organizations that evaluate your foundation. They are getting great marks. But in the middle of the good things that they've done, you have this cloud hanging over because of the percentage, the appearance. And the thing that bothers me the most about it, as I think about it, is the promises that were made saying that there would be a veil between the foundation and the State Department. Now, maybe Clinton just should never have promised that, because the reality of it is, I mean, if you deal with this really fairly, and you think about the people that in power, you have people around you that you trust. So whoever she was working with, Huma Abedin, whoever else she was working with at the Clinton Foundation, were inevitably going to come with her to the State Department. I think that's the first step. I think we can all agree to that the people she was working with at the Clinton Foundation were going to come with her to the State Department. And because this entire game of politics is 100% about relationships, it's about who you know, who you have relationships with, then clearly she was going to bring relationships from the Clinton Foundation over to the State Department. The problem is when you make a promise and say, we're going to have a veil of separation, and then on this side of that promise, we realize there was almost no separation. And not only was there no separation, but there was the appearance that people were able to give donations and get special treatment. I don't know. I just come from the world where you under promise and you over deliver. You know, it makes so much sense on this side of the equation. One, that she probably shouldn't take into the role as Secretary of State, because this is going to complicate her role as president. Right. Of course, their claims, there's pressure on her now to shut down the entire organization, which I doubt very seriously that's going to happen. There's pressure on her to not only shut down the entire organization, but to sever all ties with the organization. But that's in itself, I mean, that would be setting her up for failure again. Right. Because there is no severing ties with the organization that you helped create, with all of the relationships that you have and that you fostered over the years. And so there will be people who have the express expectation that because they have a relationship with Hillary Clinton through the Clinton Foundation, that they should expect that relationship to transcend into the White House. That is the nature of political relationships. And anyone who's going to say otherwise is not being honest with you. It's both a good thing and it's also a bad thing. And it complicates this so much. I mean, really, the potential for even more confusion if the Clinton organization's foundation stays open and she maintains ties, or if she promises to break ties and she can't break them because they're all built on relationships. It's really creates a cluster F of think about it, a cluster F of hearings that we're going to have to sit through for the next 4 to 8 years. And I know they've done good things, but they've also done some things that are sketchy at best, and the FBI has just decided not to investigate it. And I don't think the good things that they've done should be a justification for excusing everything. And that's ultimately that's the thing I have the biggest gripe with. We have to stop excusing people just because we like them, or just because they've done something good, or just because they did. I mean, how many good things would make up for the one bad thing? And anyway, so if you want to add to this, you have 725 pages of emails that were released on Monday. One newly disclosed email chain reveals that Doug Band, a Bill Clinton advisor who played a major role in establishing the Clinton Foundation, worked to set up a meeting between then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and Crown Prince Salam al-Khalifi of Bahrain after a formal request was denied, according to The Intercept. Band, the Washington Examiner, notes that he wrote to Huma Abedin to stress that Salman was a good friend of ours. The Clinton Foundation notably received a donation worth $100,000 from the Bahrain government. The reason this one email is worth pointing out is because of the Bahrain government and their human rights violations. Afterwards, the U.S. conveniently resumed arms sales to Bahrain in 2015. Human Rights Watch themselves had to say that this was a bad move. So, I have to ask people who are defending Hillary Clinton at every step of the way, justifying, saying, oh, she's doing good work with X, Y, and Z. The question is, at what point do you say that this, I don't even know how to describe. I don't even know if it's worthwhile describing at this point, right? Because if they don't see it, they just don't want to see it, right? If you can't say at this point that, you know what, forget it. That's all I'm gonna say is forget it, because I don't even feel like explaining it anymore. How much of it is criminal? That's a conversation. How much of it is going to undermine her role as the presidency? That's a conversation, right? And to what extent? Can it? Will it? But to say that she did nothing wrong, all the way back to the email investigation with the FBI, to just say that at this point is just negligence, and gross negligence and willful negligence, and just willfully ignoring the fact that at a minimum, can I get a Hillary Clinton? Can I get Peter Dow? Can I get Brock? Can I get all of her henchmen to say that at a minimum, Hillary Clinton promised something was going to happen, and it absolutely did not happen. In fact, the opposite of what she promised. She promised a division between the Secretary of State, the State Department, and the Clinton Foundation, and it absolutely did not happen. But I guarantee you, if you ask them that, those guys that I mentioned and the rest of their ilk, they would not even be able to fix their mouths to say that she, at a minimum, broke her promise during the hearings for her being confirmed as Secretary of State. And that, my friends, is a problem that I have with people being committed to their leaders without being able to critique their leaders. All right, one more story on the international news, and then we're going to prep for the bonus show. It's a good one tonight. I have some guests who are joining me on the bonus show, so you definitely want to make sure that you are a patron and that you tune in. It will be posted a little later tonight, obviously, because we haven't done it yet. We're going to do it momentarily. But one last story that I want to go over that I think is from the international stage that I think is worthwhile discussing today. The attack on the American University in Kabul. So a security guard was killed today, and 21 students were injured in an attack on the American University in Afghanistan. The attackers detonated explosives and fired guns on the premises. This occurred in Kabul, in the capital of Afghanistan, this morning while students were in lecture. The Taliban have been stepping up their attacks in the country, and the U.S. still has a significant presence there, obviously. But what's interesting is the symbolism of American University. They have over 1,700 full-time students. U.S. funds many scholarships for Afghans to attend there. And it is considered to be a modern and to represent a modern and moderate view of Afghanistan. Now, this isn't the first attack. An American and an Australian professor were kidnapped August 7th of this year by men dressed in Afghan National Police uniforms. In 2014, there was an attack where 21 people were killed, and that was a Taliban gun attack. So this place has been a target before, and it was just founded in 2006. So since 2006, there have been several attacks. So a unique feature of this is that it's actually a co-ed school. So girls and boys, men and women rather, are able to take classes together in a region where this is, to say it's taboo is an understatement. So what it represents in the region is a threat to some of the religious zealots that are there, some of the factions that are there, particularly the Taliban. It's a threat to it, and so they want to see it gone. I'm thinking back to the Russian invasion of Afghanistan and Congressman Charlie Wilson and the war that he led, or covertly led, aid again and push back against the Russians. One piece of commentary that he gave after we left the region and we left a huge vacuum in the 80s. We left there with no infrastructure. We didn't invest in the region. We didn't build schools in the region. We just helped bomb the hell and chase the Russians out. That was the extent to our commitment. And as a result, we see a tremendous amount of radicalization that came out of there, a direct result of our intervention, but then dropping the ball on even providing schools. Because America's good at war, but we're not good at providing life after war. Like, we do war great, right? But we never done nation building well, and we've never done fighting or providing basic fundamental resources, as well as outlets, as well as just schools, right? Let me just say schools. We've never been good at doing that, and particularly in this region. And so I'm wondering, this is really kind of just a speculation, but I think the role that American University can play, now, whether it's doing it or not, that's to be determined, but a role that it can play would be to provide a space where another worldview can at least compete in the region, and the opportunity for Afghan citizens to explore the world not underneath the thumb of the Taliban. And I think something like that is extremely important when, one, you're fighting radicalization, period. Two, you're fighting religious zealotry and radicalization. Three, you're in a region that has so much enmity with the West. Last but not least, though, it's still the question of intervention and being in the region in the first place. That's an entirely different conversation with so many implications that I probably honestly shouldn't even mention it. All right, folks, it's 9:58, and unfortunately, I did the entire night without calls. I saw calls coming up on my computer on the left screen, but I did not have my phones activated beforehand. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We're listening in to Bernie Sanders. And I don't know if anything significant came of it. Nothing just yet, but we'll get you a full. He's still talking. Okay. He's been talking the entire time? For an hour. Wow. Oh, so there's two introductions and then Bernie Sanders. Okay. All right. So Bernie Sanders is still talking. So I'll get you a report on Bernie Sanders. If anything significant was said, what the game plan is for our revolution. We'll talk about it tomorrow in the news. I think that's about it. Stay tuned for the bonus show. We'll be bringing it to you with some links over on Patreon. Thanks to all of our supporters. I appreciate you. So much I want to talk about, but it is 10 o'clock. Good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hey, big shout out to Nadia B, who became a patron in the middle of the show. Thanks, Nadia, for your support. We couldn't do it without people like you. Go to patreon.com/The BPD Show and become a patron now. And join us for the after show. It will be posted in about 30 minutes. Take care.